Welcome to Storytime with Pastor Steve. Today's story, Jesus Shows His Glory. It's based on Matthew 17, Mark 9, and Luke 9. It is written by Jonathan Shackid and illustrated by Bill Clark. Can you see it okay? I'm kind of hot and sweaty today. Over the years, God gave his people helpers to show them his word. Prophets and priests and judges and kings did the work of the Almighty Lord. Moses and Elijah were two of the greatest who served God in those days of old. Moses received the Lord's 10 commandments and led Israel from slavery's hold. Through the prophet Elijah, a dead boy arose, and Baal was declared a false god, and all of the wonders of Elijah and Moses pointed forward to the Son of God. Once Jesus went walking with Peter and James and John, each one a dear friend. The men followed Jesus through the mountains where his glory soon would attend. Then, as the disciples watched Jesus' face, they were filled with awe and amazement. He shone like the sun in splendor and grace and was dressed in dazzling white garment. But that was not all the disciples saw. From heaven appeared two men who had come to show Jesus kept all God's laws and made words of the prophets come true. Elijah and Moses were these two great men with whom Jesus now stood and talked. Seeing their master right next to them, the frightened disciples just gawked. The prophets and Jesus spoke of the future, how he'd die in Jerusalem. They spoke of the freedom Jesus would bring through his death. Forgiveness would come. At last Peter shook off out of his daze and said, "Master, 'tis good to be here. Let us put up tents for you, Moses and Elijah." Peter spoke in confusion and fear. Just then a bright cloud enclosed them, and the loud voice of God's message did tell, "This is my Son, whom I dearly love. With him I am pleased very well." The voice of our God, the Father, finished saying, "Listen to him." The cloud disappeared, and Elijah and Moses leaving Jesus with his disciples with him. As the disciples came down the mountain, Jesus said, "Don't tell what you saw until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." They did not understand this at all. But later they saw Jesus die on the cross between two thieves. Then when he rose up to life once again, the disciples began to believe. They realized that one glimpse of glory when they saw Jesus' bright shining face as he stood with Elijah and Moses was a heaven just a small taste. We haven't seen Jesus like they did or heard God's voice in the cloud, but still we all taste of God's goodness and sing hymns of the heavenly crowd. It happens when we join in worship and receive the gifts our God gives. In baptisms, washing, in words of forgiving, we live because Jesus lives. Just as the disciples got to see Jesus and Moses and Elijah, we too get to see God's work through the mighty acts of his people, through his church. We get to sing his praise, and we get to share in his love for each other. So I pray that you get to share love today with family and friends. May God bless you.